Good afternoon. I'm Terri Wisdom, and this is Harlem Network News. And as many of you know, Harlem Network News is a new media platform. We started in about last year at the onset of COVID, and it has really been quite a journey. We knew there was a need for media and informing the community, but this entire journey from Black Lives Matter to death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, March on Washington, the election, the insurrection, the inauguration, and just the ride of COVID and all of the disparities to our communities. So I just respectfully and gratefully have to say we are still here. And here in New York City, we just went through a monumental, historic primary election. And I have the honor today as my guest, who I feel are the stars of the election. I have Alvin Bragg, who was running for the Democratic District Attorney for Manhattan, and he won the election. And I also have with us his campaign manager. And, you know, she's a winner too, because they worked very collectively, and it's Keisha Sutton-James. But without further ado, I'm just going to go straight to Alvin Bragg. And Alvin, if you can just give us a little bit about your background, who you are, whose you are, and what the role of Manhattan District Attorney is. Thank you, Alvin.
So thank you, and thank you for your coverage throughout the primary season. This is an office that affects our community here in Harlem more than any other community historically. Certainly during my lifetime. I'm 47 years old. Grew up here in the village of Harlem, and ran very much as Harlem's own. Starting out with our base of support, here, and then ebbing throughout the island. And the message resonated, which is that, we deserve and demand both fairness, police accountability, police who are treating us fairly, investment in our communities, so we are not having this militarized policing, and also public safety, and that those are inextricably intertwined. And I experienced that, growing up here in Harlem, having had a gun pointed at me 6 times before, I turned 21, 3 of them by NYPD officers during unconstitutional stops, but also 3 by folks who are not police officers, and deciding from an early age that, this is an issue, being stopped all the time by law enforcement, but still have these fundamental safety issues. So we're going to address both, as I have throughout my career, working both as a civil rights lawyer and a prosecutor, but very proud, to be the nominee for the Democratic Party, and, for all of Manhattan, obviously, but my roots, my heart, my literal, where I live and where I grew up is from Harlem, and Harlem has shaped my worldview. I talk a lot about those early stops and early gun incidents, but I also like to talk about, the love in the village of Harlem, the fellowship, the coaches and the Sunday school teachers and the neighbors. We were, talking about it takes a village to raise a child. Also took a village to elect a nominee. And so I'm extraordinarily, grateful for not just the experiences growing up, but for the support currently, and looking forward to governing in partnership and delivering fairness and safety for all of Manhattan, but in particular for Harlem.
Okay, well, thank you. An amazing story. A young man of Harlem growing up to become the district attorney of Manhattan, which is significant. Alvin, just so that everybody's on the same page, what is the role of Manhattan District Attorney, if you will?
Sure. So I think we're going to, recast and reimagine the role I think most of the audience is seeing Law and Order. And that's our conception. That is right. That's based on the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. We have the first 30 minutes of the show with the police investigating, and then the police taking the matter to the district attorney's office to take the case forward and try it. That's the model we all have in mind. Want to emphasize a few points. We're obviously going to work in partnership with the police, but is often not the case as depicted on TV. We got to be independent and objective, right? Doing our own reviews of what we think is public safety. So I've talked about the kind of offenses that I think don't advance public safety that I've seen prosecuted in our neighborhoods. And so I'm going to, be telling the NYPD, we're not going to do those kind of cases. We're going to be focusing on the kind of things that we sit around our kitchen tables have been talking about, the gun incidents and things of that nature. And then also, I don't know if I've ever seen a Law and Order episode about, police accountability. Maybe there has been one, but that's not something that's necessarily talked about a lot. I think, as you noted, the last year or so, we've been talking about it more. So we need, objective, independent reviews of our law enforcement. And I plan to do that. I've done that throughout my career. Take sort of, pride in people having worked with law enforcement on cases that deliver public safety, but also, holding them accountable, prosecuting law enforcement for misconduct. So they're both a part of the district attorney's job. And I think we can't really have one without the other. Well, they are needed for an enduring public safety.
Okay, thank you, Alvin. And now we're going to go to your campaign manager, Keisha Sutton-James. And Keisha, I guess you can start about your relationship with Alvin Bragg and how you came to be the campaign manager. And then if you could share with our Harlem Network News just a little bit about your background, because I know it's all intertwined and you also are a child and adult of Harlem. Thank you.
In the long history of our beautiful village, I definitely feel like a child of Harlem. I think no matter how old I get, I will be a child of this village. And I think Alvin probably feels the same way. So yes, I'm very much a child of Harlem. I feel the same way that Alvin does in terms of the love and nourishment that I've gotten from this community, that which it has poured into me, and the pride that I take in being a child of Harlem. I oftentimes point out that I'm a 5th generation Harlemite. That's one of my favorite themes to claim. So I grew up here. Some know that my grandfather was Percy Sutton, who was elected from Harlem initially. He was attorney for Malcolm X, and then became the New York State Assemblyman for our district, then became Manhattan Borough President and first Black man to run for mayor. So I grew up literally one floor below him in the same apartment building in Harlem, and from him learned to understand the importance of our electeds and politics, and the power that they wield, and the ability to wield that power for good. And having, over the last, I don't know, probably 7 years, maybe more, 7 to 10 years, really kind of done more and more research and understanding about the criminal justice system and the impact it has had on our community. And having known Alvin since we were in college together, I say together because he was at Harvard while I was at down the road. We have mutual friends, which is how we got to know one another. So having known him for as long as I have, as soon as he said he wanted to run for DA, I said, how can I be helpful? And when you volunteer enough, sometimes opportunities come your way. And
yes,
he asked me to serve as campaign manager. For all of those who, I'm going to speak specifically probably to women right now and say, for all of those of you who think that perhaps you're not ready for a role, which is what I thought at the time. And it took a little convincing. And I honestly owe a major debt of gratitude to Alvin for taking the time to convince me, and a couple of other people. I thought, I've never run a campaign. I've never actually even really worked on a campaign.
Okay.
How can I do this? And along with the rest of the staff, especially Alvin looks like he wants to say something. What do you want to say?
No, I was going to say,
Yeah, jump in.
Obviously, as I told her, I'm a first-time candidate too, so we were new, and I think she's about to mention other members of the team who have more experience. But as I told her, given her background, her master's in business administration, she knows how to run stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the combination of that operational strength, plus sharing the vision and our personal connection was I think the recipe for success here. And so yes, we had people on the team who would run campaigns, and that's important. But Keisha being Keisha is important. And all that she represents, and all that she's accomplished, and really tying together, as I told her, having, the ability to talk to someone where you can start in mid-sentence, right? The person who understands, we attend church together, right? Our kids have done similar activities. We've
yes.
Didn't know each other somehow, like kind of almost amazingly, didn't know each other growing up here in Harlem. But very parallel experiences, so that we're not mind readers. We still have to talk to one another, but can really kind of start mid-flow. And I think that comfort level, look, I've only done one campaign. I'm not going to be giving campaign advice to others, but I know for us, that recipe was very important. I think palpable to others. And this was very much sort of a friends and family campaign, powered by, people we know who've known us for a long time, who share our vision for change. And I think that helped a lot. That feeling was palpable to then others who were attracted and joined the campaign.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Yes, Keisha.
I want to follow up on that and say, like, that what Alvin just touched upon is that I think the most important part of the recipe was, yes, all the rest of us brought all of our resources and relationships to this campaign. But Alvin is an extraordinary candidate in that he is an extraordinary person, first of all, and as such, for the last 20, 30, 40 years, he's been collecting relationships based on the quality of the person that he is. And so he had legions of people who wanted to help get him over the line because they understood who he was, the skill that he brought, the intent that he brought, the heart that he brought, and understood that this was a bet that they'd be willing to go in real hard on. And that was, for me as well, never having done this before, it was like, okay, I'm pushing all my chips in on this one. I'm putting all my chips in on this one. And I'm so thankful that that Alvin, pushed me to do it. I did want to just finish that sentence and say, for those of us who, think that a role is outside one's reach, rethink and think about how you can be supported through that role, so that you can be successful, and that you have the resources, the advisors, the thinking partners, et cetera, as well as the right setup in the role to be successful. So don't let it, I've never done that before, hold you back, because we now have not just a successful political candidate who, by the way, I want to point out, will be the first Black Manhattan district attorney, not just Manhattan district attorney. But also, me as now I'm 1 for 1 as a campaign manager.
Yes. Yeah, it's very, I'm Terri Wisdom. And for those of you who are just joining, this is Harlem Network News, and we are a new media platform. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, harlemnetworknews.com. And we also just did our launch on Clubhouse. So we're very, 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 very excited about it. And we do consider ourselves the voice and drumbeat of Harlem. So it's very heartfelt to have 2 children, now adults of Harlem, who put their heads together, their hearts together, their minds together, and actually were successful. I mean, I think in Harlem and everywhere, we always have to think about role models. So it's very inspiring to young people. And I just have two young people working with me right now. And one is one of our production associates, and she's 15. Her name is London Bess. She also happens to be my granddaughter. But I have another intern who is working with us also, and her name is Samira Agby. And they actually helped me develop some of the questions. They researched, on each of you, so I think it's just an inspiration in terms of what you're saying, that don't ever sell yourself short in terms of what you can do. And I mean, I have worked in media a long time at every network, and these 15-year-olds are bringing it. They are bringing it like any adult, like anybody coming in is. And to me, that's very inspirational, because it means that we can pass that baton. Just speaking a little bit more about the race, Alvin, you had some tough competitors, and you had people that put a lot of money and their own money. And what do you think leveled the playing field, in terms of you being able to win out that kind of money, that kind of backing? And, evidently, you were very qualified. If you can speak just a little bit about your background, where you went to school, the jobs you've had prior, some of the cases you're working on. So you were definitely qualified, but there were other candidates like right behind you who had those qualifications and outspent you. So what do you think turned that key?
So I think we've talked a little bit about it in terms of sort of the people power. And you talk about the 15-year-old production assistants. We had a phenomenal group, and it was inspiring, of young people who are not old enough to vote. And I'm like, look, these folks need, they are moving democracy in a way. And every time I talk to someone who was old enough to vote, who said, oh, I don't vote, I would say, look, we have these young folks who are out here doing so much for our democracy. All you need to do is vote. So really having a network of people who were, as Keisha said, very vested in the outcome, that network, and you were right, we were outspent greatly. I mean, we raised a lot of money. We're the second, the campaign that had the second most funds. And I think we should be talking about campaign finance reform for the DA's office. But ultimately, it was the network, I think, combined with a vision, because we had very informed volunteers. They were, we made it a point to sort of have a series where we were kind of always informing and talking about my background and also our plans, very robust plans, and so that they were able to articulate it. And to talk about my background, because I think we fused together my professional experience and my lived experience. So we talked about growing up in Harlem. Those early experiences are sort of why I went to law school. So I went to Harvard for college and law school, and then came right back to Harlem and started out as a criminal defense lawyer and a civil rights lawyer, and then spent 15 plus years in government, working at the city, state, and federal levels on a range of issues, both as a civil rights lawyer, focusing on pushing back on stop and frisk, doing police accountability work, but also doing work on gun trafficking, on sexual harassment, on matters of significant public safety, significant public corruption, and then ultimately becoming the chief deputy, the #2 lawyer in the New York State Attorney General's office.
Okay.
So what I heard from voters when I was out talking to them was they liked what we were talking about, kind of both fairness and safety. They liked the fact that I'd lived both of those issues and worked on both of them, but also heard from lots of voters, you got the best team out here. They went to the poll site and they knew what the policies were. They could articulate, they knew things about you. We also had a lot of people who know me for a long time. And I heard from a number of voters, I talked to someone who's known you for 30 years. So
Wow.
they were able to talk in very powerful ways about what the plan was. So I think all of that put together, and look, I think it's we've seen this in other places in our politics in recent elections where candidates who were far outspent still prevailed. And so I think there's a lesson there for all of us. I mean, kind of stepping out on faith, if you will, and putting forth your vision and letting the electorate decide, and feeling really encouraged that the electorate, chose us, and really feeling humbled, by that. As I said on primary night, to supporters, to whom much is given, much also is expected. So, we now have, and I view it as, my name's on the ballot. I will run the office. The as they say, the buck stops with me, so to speak. But it's collective power, right? So, I own the accountability, if you will, but share with our community partners and with everyone to help this joint endeavor and this power to use law enforcement judiciously and wisely for both fairness and safety.
Okay, well, thank you, Alvin. Keisha, if you would like to chime in as the campaign manager and just let us know where we are in the campaign, because I really always want to speak truth to power. I want our community to be informed. I want our voters to be educated. So explain to us what happened. Alvin has won the primary election, but what do you have to do? Where do we have to go? What has to happen for Alvin to be elected as the, as the full candidate, and no longer candidate, but, receive the office? What steps have to happen? How much time do we have? Who's running against him? I mean, what do we have to do? Because it's not over.
Yeah. So I want to, if I may, I want to back up just a touch and say, yes, he has won the primary route. We are really proud of the results. Despite having been outspent about 6-1, we were able to win by almost 9,000 votes, by 3.5%, despite the fact that not only were we outspent almost 6-1, but also there were 6 other candidates in addition to Alvin in the race. So it was, I think, a really significant win, and also because he's the first Black Manhattan DA, or will be the first Black Manhattan DA. He is the first Black Democratic nominee for Manhattan District Attorney. There is a general election in November. There is a Republican who is running against him, Tom Coniff. We very much need for people to turn back out in November to vote for the entire slate up and down the Democratic line, in order to put in place Alvin, but also our Democratic mayoral candidate and many others. Let's be clear, 2 things. 1, we got to win the general. And 2, Alvin, while this role has a great deal of power, I don't want to say unilateral power, but kind of unfettered power. He has a decision-making power that is his. But he also needs to have in office a mayor who is more closely aligned with him than not. So in order to be able to truly to achieve, some of his goals, especially around police accountability, there are the NYPD does not report to Alvin. The NYPD reports to the mayor.
Okay.
So he needs to have a partner in the mayor's office who is not Curtis Sliwa, the Republican running for office. It needs to be,
I hear you.
Eric Adams. So that's, first of all, yes, we all need to get out and vote in November. But also, most importantly, what we've seen around the country is that as new prosecutors come into office, we call them the progressive prosecutors, because they're not just strictly lock them up, law and order prosecutors. They've been under significant attack nationwide. And we've seen this in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, all over. And it happens immediately. In fact, Alvin has already gotten a tweet from Ann Coulter, who, loves to speak out about any and everything that she, I'll just say that she disagrees with. And so
Okay, would you just clarify for the audience who Ann Coulter is, please? I want
sorry.
everybody to know everything.
She is a conservative pundit, if you will, author, et cetera, et cetera. The point is that he will be, we are expecting him to be under attack from the right. And so we need for, this is one of the lessons in civic engagement is it's not just about voting, it's about doing your research before you vote and then voting smartly. And then it's about being engaged with what's happening after you vote. What are people saying about, the person you voted for? Is it, what are they reporting on? Are they under attack? Are they supported well? And so it'll be important as we move forward for people to follow the work that he's doing and engage with the office. We're going to be doing between now and the end of the year, we're going to be doing more community outreach so people understand, what his plans are beyond the people.
That's great.
To understand what his plans are. And so they can, continue to follow and I hope support his plans so that he can actually execute on the promises. And let's be clear, we don't, whether, just like in Washington, when, the president is trying to right now pass a number of pieces of legislation, they're speaking with the public because they know that the public can push their electeds to do, what they intend. The White House is saying to the public, support the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, because they know they need public support to get these things done. And in the same way, Alvin Bragg is going to need the public support in order to push back, the forces that will be pushing against police accountability, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you, Keisha. Yeah, it helps a lot. I think it's very important. And I mean, we know that you are going to be elected as the district attorney for all of Manhattan. We know that you reside in Harlem. We know that your roots are in Harlem. And Harlem is the Mecca in a lot of ways. It's a Mecca for New York City. If you say anything to anybody around the world, when you say Harlem, there comes a vision of like Renaissance and change and all kinds of things, culture, education. However, it's very, very important that all of New York City voters understand what's going on and they get engaged and they don't feel a disconnect between the public officials and themselves. I must say, and it's important, and this is one of our missions in this primary, only 28% of the people voted in New York City. In the whole of New York City, only 28% of the people voted. And even with ranked choice, which we just experienced, which, Alvin Bragg's campaign was not under ranked choice because it really had to do with the state. But when ranked choice came about, only 14% or 17% of the people voted, and that's how it got in. So, I mean, to me, it just shows, especially now when we have people going to jail and fleeing their state because they want to hold up, voter rights and end voter suppression. And here in New York, I maybe we have a covert voter suppression where people just don't feel what they do matters. But I mean, how do we connect with the community? Because it seems like you've been able to do that, but I think it's very important across the board. How can we get the community to understand that they've got to come out to vote, that it matters, that what happens in their life matters, and that, public officials, we're in their hands, but we should control what they're doing and be a part. So how do we do that? Because it appears you've been able to do it. That's why you won the election.
Look, I think we need more engagement and more sustained engagement. I think that we obviously see an uptick right around election time in engagement. And one thing, and Keisha mentioned it, we're going to do it in September, we're going to do it in October, but it's going to be a 365-day thing, should we be elected, to engage all the time. And I think that kind of sustained engagement should translate. I think that there are a lot of reasons why people don't vote. I've had conversations the past couple of months trying to persuade people to just vote. I had a lot of conversations, just vote. I'm not even asking for your vote alone. I just think you should just vote. And some of the responses I heard, they're not surprising. Like, why did I vote?
Okay. I think Alvin just froze a little bit. Okay, he's back. Alvin, go right ahead. You froze a little bit.
Well, I would just say you're kind of getting people to engage. It's going to require sustained engagement over not just the months leading up to an election, but over our entire term in office. I think that's how you get it, and that's how you develop it. And like you said, I mean, in Manhattan, I think there were a little over 200,000 votes, 212 or so thousand votes, and so we all should have a real joint focus on getting those numbers up, particularly now with early voting. I mean, obviously, people have a lot of pulls on their time, but we've got a lot more windows in which one can vote. So I'm hoping going forward that will continue to help. But I think it's something that's incumbent upon all of us to work at it, to explain, and particularly in the headwinds of COVID and health concerns and food insecurity and economic issues, that we are connecting what we do in office to people's everyday lives.
Okay, thank you, Alvin. And for those of you who are just tuning in, I'm Terri Wisdom. I'm your host. This is Harlem Network News, and I have the honor today to have our Democratic candidate who has been victorious, Alvin Bragg, who is from Harlem. And I also have his incredible campaign manager, Keisha Sutton-James. Keisha, do you want to speak a little bit about that voting and what your team is doing moving forward to November to assure that Alvin wins this November election? Mm-hmm. Keisha? Okay. Yeah, can you hear me?
My internet went unstable.
It's okay.
I think there's some weather issues in Harlem where I think we all.
Yeah, you guys are. I don't know if you're hearing the thunder, and he and I are just a few blocks from one another.
Okay. I'm in sunshine right now.
Rub it in. Rub it in.
Up the island. I'm in some sunshine, so I don't know if it's coming my way too. So
I don't know. I don't even pay attention to whether it's not mine.
No.
Well, anyway. But to answer your question, I think the last thing that Alvin said is, well, both things that Alvin said are perfectly on point. I think the last one is really, really important, that, connecting, I think, connecting the issues to people's lives, to the vote, is critical. I think that I know that there were people who went out to vote for Alvin for the DA's race that had to then figure out who they were voting for everyone else for all the other races. Because so to me, that says two things. One is they care about the DA's race, and two, they cared about Alvin. So meaning you have a role that resonated with voters. You had a role that people understood the importance of, and understood the importance of putting someone they trusted and believed in into. And then secondly, you had a candidate who captured the imagination of what they'd been looking for. And so the second part, both parts are, if people are only voting for in those occasions, if people are only being educated and voting in those occasions, and that's a problem. And that is the problem. That is part of the problem, is that we oftentimes only vote when our hearts and our imaginations are captivated by a superstar candidate like Alvin Bragg, who, by the way, somebody's going to write it at some point. Somebody's going to write that Keisha said that Alvin's the Barack Obama of the Manhattan District Attorney.
Okay, I raised my hand and I'm taking that. And remember, Alvin,
I said
we're
it
right here.
But the point is, he's a candidate who brings all the experience and the personality and the intellect and the humility. Not every candidate is going to be that lovely. As Barack Obama says, I think it was Obama who said, you don't have to, maybe it was Mrs. Obama, I can't remember, who said, you don't have to marry the candidate. You just need to like vote for them. It doesn't, doesn't need to be perfect. It does not need to be, and many candidates are not perfect, but you need to go through the process of figuring out, what these people are about, and making an evaluation as to what makes the most sense for you and your values. But also you need to, we as voters need to be educated. We need to expend the energy, and we, those who are trying to get votes, need to expend the energy to explain to people what, the role is about, why it's so important to them personally, et cetera, which is exactly what Alvin just said. And the last thing I'll say about that is, while we're sitting around saying, it's not important, I don't understand, it's not relevant, Republicans are systematically going, they went from the presidential, down to the governorships, to the state legislatures, to the, now their big thing is critical race theory. And I am certain they have their eyes focused on our school boards nationwide. And yes, let's be clear, like while we're sitting around sleeping saying that, I'm not going to vote, I'm not going to be involved in that, they are being effective and taking over. And they did the same thing with the judges, Supreme Court, all the way down.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And here at Harlem Network News, we really are trying to educate people, engage people, and have them understand. And to me, a circumstance like COVID has been horrific. It's been horrific in Harlem and many of the other Black and brown and poor communities across the country and across the world. But I do believe that COVID has been a great teacher for us. It pulled the scab off the wound. Those of us who have been living it have known this all along. We've known about the disparities, but it highlighted the disparities for the world. And it also made us think about it and think that we have and should have the power to change these disparities. I'm going to get to two of the questions that my young staff have. And one is for you, Alvin Bragg, and this question is from London Bass. What has being Chief Deputy AG in New York State office taught you? And she knows that because she researched it. So.
Yeah, so I think most relevant to the DA's role is management. It's a large office, the Attorney General's office is, and overseeing an office of that size, I think it's great preparation for overseeing the DA's office. Lots of similarities in terms of subject matter, in terms of the nature of the work, some differences, of course, but I think that is key. And then look, I think the core approach, which I learned there and in roles prior to that, is following the facts wherever they go, and that sometimes means they go to an influential person or corporation. It sometimes means that they go to a political figure of any party, I should add. I mean, while I'm the Democratic nominee, this work is apolitical, and certainly employed that and underscored that with folks I was working with in the Attorney General's office, going where the facts take us without fear or favor, and doing that judiciously, understanding that the consequences of government power and employing it judiciously, but employing it because it can have significant impacts for good, whether that be securing our rights, whether that could be securing safety. So those are some of the things I learned as Chief Deputy.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is for you also, from London Bass. What are your thoughts on gun violence, as this is a local, state, and national problem?
I think that's spot on, local, state, and national. This is a problem, an urgent problem. I had a friend who was had shots in his direction, just probably about 3/4 of a block, about 100 feet from me. I'm not great at measuring it, but very close. And I'm no stranger to gun violence. My brother-in-law had his best friend, murdered in front of him by gun.
Mm.
And it's urgent. It affects the entire island. We saw, the incident in Times Square this summer. Certainly affects Harlem. And so I've worked on this issue. I've done gun prosecution cases. At the Attorney General's office, we built a portal that looked at every single gun found at a crime scene in the state of New York and traced it back to its last sale from a licensed firearm dealer, those sales being outside the state of New York. So I have an all of the above approach on guns. We need to focus on gun interdiction, stopping the flow from coming in. We need to be, making sure that people who, for example, have domestic violence issues are not possessing guns. We've got laws that address that. We need to be funding our community interrupters, who are often formally justice involved people who are, as I call it, running to the fire when an incident occurs to minimize the likelihood of retaliation. We've got to be doing all of this, and to me, this is job one. Guns, urgent crisis in and of themselves, but they also, more than any other type of crime, affect the perception of safety, right? So we are, at still, compared to historic levels, all of us were here in Harlem in the 80s, right? The data,
Yes.
we're far off from that. But if you are, my friend who was shot at, if you're the parent of the 1-year-old who shot this summer, the data is sort of beside this point. And this is mission critical, I think, for me, is a day one issue. We've got robust plans. We're going to be centralizing this issue in our administration.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I know that we're at the final minutes. Everybody's got other things that they've got to get to. Busy as we are always in New York City, Harlem. So Keisha, do you want to just give a final statement? And then Alvin will let you just close us out. And thank you for just taking the time for us to really get to know you. And Keisha, if you can also just let us know what we can do to assist. Thank you, Keisha. And then we're going to let you close out, Alvin. Thank you.
I just first want to reiterate our gratitude to you, Terri, for having us on now, but also throughout the campaign. There's, you're providing a platform where people can get to know the different candidates. Oops,
unmute. Okay, we just lost you, Keisha. Okay.
Yeah, I saw
Go
it.
ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
So just you're providing a platform where people could get to know all the candidates, and is invaluable, and I'm sure was very helpful to us. So I want to first thank you for having us on now and throughout the campaign as well. In addition, I will just say, in terms of moving forward, if people can come to Alvin's website at alvinbrag.nyc.com. No, that's the handle. It's just alvinbrag.com.
Okay, alvinbrag.com, and we'll be sure to push that out.
Yes. Or social media, alvinbragnyc.com, to keep following us, and then vote. We are, by the way, the rest of the campaign will actually cost money, so we're still accepting donations of any value, and come vote with us in November. That's
Thank you so much. Harlem Network News, and yes, donations are a key. We've got to really support ourselves, support our candidates. Harlem Network News pretty much is solo on people making donations, so it's critical. Alvin, if you would just close us out, and then we're going to say good afternoon and good evening. Yes.
Sure. Thank you for having us on. Thank you for allowing us to engage with your audience. We look forward to continuing to do this, right? As we explore issues. Keisha mentioned we'll be having stakeholder meetings in September and October. Check our website. We'd love to continue to engage. We have lots of policies, but want to continue to refine them and to hear from people as things are happening in our community. So we thank you for having us on and look forward to this being part of a dialogue that goes certainly through November, and we hope well into next year and beyond. So thank you so
Right.
much.
It's a continuing process, and thank you for the great work you're doing. If you just want to speak briefly, I know that, and I don't want to misspeak, but that you have been working with Miss Gwen Carr, the mother, and you know what has been happening with that, with the Eric Garner case. I mean, your boots on the ground, you're running you know, this campaign, but you're also still actively working on active things. So just brief.
Sure. So, you know, I'm a visiting professor at New York Law School and co-direct the Racial Justice Project there. And in that capacity, represent Ms. Carr and others in a transparency lawsuit against the mayor and the city. We had a really good couple of weeks. The appellate court upheld the trial court's decision that we can have an inquiry. You know, the many facts we don't know about, you know, what happened, what was the basis for the stop. Was the basis of the stop? Was there probable cause? You know, what was the medical care that was given or not given? We've got the forms that were filled out afterwards that were not accurate. So we have an opportunity to explore all of that. The court is tentatively set October 25th as a hearing. We were in court on Monday virtually, and the court said that she's blocking out 3 weeks of her schedule starting on October 25th to explore these important issues. So I'm honored to work on that case and see that as, you know, consistent with this, you know, vision of justice and fairness for all.
Yes, thank you very, very much, Alvin. It has been an honor to have you here. Keisha Sutton-James, an honor to have you here. And we'll just have you back so that more people can understand how you got to where you are and how we can walk in alignment with you. Terri Wisdom, Harlem Network News, and please continue to tune in and to support. It's a great day in Harlem, as every day. It takes a village. Good afternoon and good evening. Blessings and congratulations again. Thank you. Congratulations to everyone who voted as well. You're all a part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.